Taiwan's defense ministry says that a Chinese balloon crossed the Taiwan Straits median line just about a month before the national presidential election. That's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense first described this as a surveillance balloon, the way we also had a surveillance balloon in America, remember. But then later, the defense minister said the initial understanding is that it's a weather balloon. He may have gotten a talking to. Taiwan also detected 26 Chinese military aircraft and 10 Chinese warships near the island in the last 24 hours. Joining me right now is the Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow for China Strategy, the author of The 100-Year Marathon, a must-read, Michael Pillsbury, back with us. Michael, good to see you this morning. What's your take on what just happened here
Thanks,
with
Maria.
this surveillance balloon, or now they're calling it a weather balloon? What do you think?
I think it's an example of the failure of the Xi Jinping-Biden summit. Remember, they were going to restore military contacts and try to reduce tension in the Taiwan Strait. That was the explicit purpose of the summit. Now we have an increase in this harassment and intimidation of Taiwan, not a decrease. Number one. Number two, this raises an interesting issue of who is advising Biden, and is he more pro-China than his own advisors? His advisors have written books that we can all read that are pretty hawkish on China. One's called The Long Game. He says he agrees with 100-Year Marathon. But Biden himself is particularly warm and soft to Xi Jinping. Remember, he used the word honor. I'm honored to host Xi Jinping. He does not bring up, his advisors say, bring up human rights. Let's try to get Jimmy Lai out of jail. Biden himself somehow refuses to do anything that would offend the Chinese. This is just a mystery to me. Especially issues like human rights, that when he was a senator, he used to push all the time for human rights in China. But now he's silent on Jimmy Lai, silent on the Uyghurs, a whole series of things he needs to do about Taiwan. You know, they bought 60 jet fighters or 55 F-16 jet fighters from us. They're still not delivered. The Taiwan side paid for these jet fighters. They could use them badly now, but they're just somehow sitting on them, even though Biden's own advisors to Congress have said we need to do this. So this is a growing mystery to me, why Biden is so soft on China as an individual president against his advisors' their own advice.
You make a great point. It's not a mystery to the House Republicans, by the way. They say that he's compromised, and Beijing has a whole lot of information on Biden, and that's why he's so soft on communist China, because he's accepted all this money from China. So we're still watching this investigation play out, and when we have actual more facts in terms of what Joe Biden did for communist China, we'll be reporting that. But in the meantime, you make a great point, and that is this so-called deliverable that was supposed to come out of that Xi Jinping Joe Biden meeting was the fact that the U.S. and Chinese militaries would be communicating again. We haven't seen any evidence that they're actually communicating. So once again, China is saying one thing but doing another, and there's absolutely no accountability for it. What's the impact of that?
Well, the impact has been really bad in Europe. They are getting to release some measures they took against China. Remember, President Trump succeeded in getting the Europeans, especially the British, to not buy Huawei equipment, to put controls and try to monitor investments going into China in the high-tech area. A number of things like that began to make progress. Now, for some reason, the Biden administration, or President Biden himself, no longer raises these issues with the Europeans. So I was quite surprised, Maria. I was in China about 3 weeks ago. They had a lot of think tanks from Europe. Up to 50 think tanks from the European side we got to hear talk. They're beginning to see China as the #1 power in the world. So Biden may go down in history as the president who lost Europe. I never thought I would say that.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Italy sees it the way most people do, and that's why they just got out of the Belt and Road strategy yesterday, Giorgia Meloni making it formal. We knew that was coming. But I want to get your take on this agreement between the United States and Mexico. They are agreeing to cooperate on a stronger screening of foreign investments to reduce national security risks, to share information about that screening process. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen announced this deal during a trip to Mexico City, and she claims it aims to prevent China from purchasing American technology that can be accessed through other U.S. trading partners. The Biden administration continues to face questions about whether the agreement will also restrict Chinese investments in Mexico. Watch this.
We don't ask countries to choose between the United States and China when it comes to economic opportunities or investment. Sovereign nations get to decide for themselves. And what we're focused on is the President's Global Program for Investment in Infrastructure, PGI we call it, which is really about offering alternatives to some of the less transparent, less reliable, high-interest loans that other nations around the world seem to be willing to proffer.
Michael, I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because to me it feels like this is all just around the edges. I mean, in the middle of all of this conversation about China not being able to buy technology, accessing important technology, we have Chinese companies that are tied to the Chinese military trading in the United States right now, enabling American investors to pretty much fund the expansion of communist China. I say this every single day, and yet we continue to see this administration fail to pull the economic levels and shut off the capital markets in America, the deepest in the world, to the communist nation, who is our #1 adversary. Your thoughts?
Well, I strongly agree. You should keep on saying it. Don't get frustrated. But we did have a kind of a stab in the back in the last 2 weeks. An otherwise conservative congressman from North Carolina, Patrick McHenry, wrote a letter to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee in the middle of their negotiations. Their deal, the House and Senate deal, was to be sure U.S. companies must report investment in high-tech and military sectors in China. Congressman McHenry and Republicans who joined him opposed this, and now the rumor is that it's been dropped. So just like last year, there was a provision that America should not buy drones from China, especially law enforcement and military. That was pulled out mysteriously a year ago. Now it looks like this really crucial thing to get companies to report. Otherwise, we don't know, Maria, how much investment's going into China. This has now been sabotaged by this letter from Patrick McHenry, and with no opposition. I'm hoping Mike Gallagher and his committee will go after McHenry and oppose him. But this looks like a done deal, and it's just a disaster.
Yeah, let's point out that McHenry announced this week that he's actually not going to seek re-election, so he's out of Congress next year, but this is his parting shot here. Michael, real quick, why would he do that? We all understand the threat quite clearly. Why would he stop that? And is it because of the donor class, the donors saying, don't put that in there because I don't want to have to report it because I want to sell my wares or my widgets to 1.4 billion people in China?
It's not just McHenry alone. He got all the subcommittee Republican chairs on his committee, his Financial Services Committee, to join him. And I read their speeches. They're all saying, oh, this is really bad. We're just like communist China if we try to get our companies to report their investments. That's obviously simply not true. And if you look at the records of donor contributions to these House Foreign Affairs, not Foreign Affairs, House Financial Services members, it's very high. The banks, Goldman Sachs, their PACs, they all donate to this committee in particular.
That's right.
So it shouldn't have surprised us, but it certainly surprised me. You think of House Republican conservatives as willing to take measures against China, but in this really important case, they have defected. So I hope the House and Senate Armed Services Committee will stay tough and keep their provisions, but I'm not optimistic. The rumor is they've already caved in these negotiations.
Amazing. Well, look, they were enablers for Nazi Germany in the 1930s as well, weren't there? Michael, good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Maria.
All right,
Keep
Michael
up the fight.
Pillsbury joining us. Thank you so much. We will do that.